Hi there, and welcome to Getting to Know Your Tools with John Deal. Let's start with tools for measuring. Naturally, a ruler would start off this category, but I figured most people are already familiar with those, so the tape measure will start us off. A good tape with a strong blade is a helpful friend to have in your toolbox. I like one that has a magnetic end. But if you're just looking for the basics, get one that looks like it can fall off a ladder and won't shatter. Cheap ones easily break, or the blade gets bent. Expensive ones are often more than most artists need. You get the idea. A trusty sidekick to the tape measure is the 12-inch level. Most artists will need to install their work at some point. Use a level to check that your work is straight. This will make your install look more professional and will keep people like me from having a conniption fit if it's out of level. Next up in the measuring department is the protractor. This one is kind of like the one you had in grade school, but all grown up. While this is a little more than the average artist might need, if your work requires precision angles, this is a reliable tool. Another good addition is a combination square. This is great for making precision marks at 90 and 45-degree angles. These come in a variety of lengths, and some have more attachments. This one is just a simple combination square. You can also use a speed square when measuring out cuts to make sure the marks are straight. These cheap and cheerful squares are ready at hand and easy to use. Here's a little tip that you might not have come across. It's called the 3-4-5 rule. Basically, if one length is 3 units long and the other is 4 units long, the hypotenuse will be 5 units long. If we go through the math, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. 9 plus 16 equals 25. And so if we take the square root of 25, we'll get 5. That's the 3-4-5 rule. This can be used with centimeters, inches, or any unit that is reliably consistent. Hammers are a maker's best friend. A hammer doesn't have to break the bank to be good quality. Ideally, you have a hammer with a good weight, a strong handle, and some cushioning to reduce the impact and stress on your hands and wrists. These examples are 16-ounce Estwing hammers. There are two basic hammers, the claw hammer and the framing hammer. Both are adept at hitting things. Claw hammers are more commonly used by carpenters and woodworkers for pulling nails and other fasteners. Framing hammers are commonly used for working at a larger scale. The straighter peen, the back of the hammer, can be used for ripping apart lumber that was nailed together as a pry bar and for general demolition. There are other hammers that have been engineered for a variety of purposes. For an artist and or maker, I would direct you towards the claw hammer over any others. It's kind of the best for general purposes. No toolbox should be without a good multi-driver. There is a huge variety of models out there. The best model that I have found is made by MegaPro. I always have one of these near me in my home, studio, or workshop. If you can't get a quality multi-driver, get a good set of various screwdriver models. Generally, this would be a number 2 in each Phillips, Flathead, and Robertson, but you certainly could purchase a number 1 and 3 in each of these types. Another handy-dandy tool to have at your side is a basic adjustable wrench. Of course, if you find yourself working with bolts more than occasionally, a full set of wrenches would be warranted. There are a lot of different fasteners. For us here, I wanted to focus on the more common types. The main difference between a screw and a bolt is that a screw is tapered to a point and made to bore into a material like wood or metal, while a bolt is not tapered and connects to a nut in order to hold things together. The bolt and nut are often accompanied by a washer, which helps to create an even better hold. In addition to the different types of fasteners, there are several different types of head. There is the flathead, one of the earliest modern screw heads. It is prone to slippage, also known as camming out. This can cause damage to the screw head, the material, and even the user. The Robertson is probably the screw that I use the most. Because of its square shape, it hugs the driver and does not cam out often. In some cases, the screw holds on so well that it can be held upside down and won't fall off the driver. The Phillips head, or star head, also offers less chance of camming out, but arguably not as good as the Robertson. There is a somewhat interesting bit of history about these two screws. If you're so inclined, it should be easy to find a video recounting the story. The hex head is used liberally in all of your IKEA furniture, and the Torx head is a simple evolution of the hex head. Finally, we have two basic types of nails, The common nail with a broad head, easy for hitting, and the finishing nail with a small head, which is often countersunk into the material and then covered over with spackle or putty to hide it. Back in the world of tools, the staple gun is important for those artists who are committed to building and stretching their own canvas. The JT21 model is strong enough to drive a staple into wood while not wearing out your hand. For more oomph, you can move up to the T50 model, which will not only drive with more power, but can use heavier gauge staples. Overall, these are excellent at tacking one thing to another. I can't help but mention tape. There are so many different types of tape, I won't even attempt to cover them all. I almost always have some masking tape, electrical tape, and double-sided tape at hand. In the gripping and holding department, let's start with the common slip joint pliers. These have two positions. The first of the two sets the jaws close together so that they can touch, giving you a good strong grip on your material. The second setting widens the jaws and allows them to grip larger materials. For extra grip, locking pliers, sometimes known as vice grips, use a lever action to lock down on your materials and make a more secure hold. If you happen to be working with pipes, you will likely want a pair of water pump pliers, or what I have always referred to as channel lock pliers, although that's a brand name. Lineman's pliers come in really handy if you're working with wire, as they're a good gripping plier with a wire cutter at the base of the jaw. Needle nose pliers are often very useful, for everything from reaching into hard-to-get places to fixing clasps on necklaces. They also look kind of like an alligator's jaw, or perhaps a pterodactyl. Nom nom nom. If you're working with wire for jewelry or crafting, you might pick up a pair of fine needle nose pliers. These little fellas are side cutters, good for cutting wire or snipping metal or plastic. The fine side cutters are also good for use in crafting or jewelry making. They pair well with the needle nose pliers. There are many different types of cutters, from bolt cutters to fine snips. Your type of work will determine the best one to use. In my home and my workshop, my utility knife is never very far from me. This type of knife has a replaceable blade. Better yet, they've made the blade so that when the tip gets dull, you can break it off for a fresh, sharp one. Having a small handsaw around is helpful when you just need to make a small cut into wood or metal. There are plenty of versions out there. I usually have one like this or a small Japanese pull saw in my kit.
Last but not least in the cutting section is a handsaw and miter box. This common saw can be used to make rough cuts. There are many different types of saws. Japanese saws for finer woodworking, hex saws for cutting metal and for plastics, and coping saws for cutting tight curves or even inside cuts. The miter box is a helpful tool when you need a guide to make straight 90 or 45 degree cuts. This one also has a 60 degree guide. There are different models of these. The higher end models are made out of metal and have a guided saw attached. This is a relatively cheap model. I prefer a wooden model as they are a little more robust than this, but they don't seem to be easy to find as they once were. There's some good tutorials online for making your own, if you're so inclined.
Heading up the painting section is the basic 2.5-inch sash brush. This is good for general use. The sash helps to control paint and get into corners. Of course, there are many different brushes for many different applications. I strongly encourage purchasing a decent quality brush. Inferior models, while saving you some money, will usually leave bristles in your paint. These will need to be picked out, often leaving marks. It isn't worth the hassle or frustration. While you're in the paint section, pick up a brush comb. This little buddy will go a long way to keeping your brush in better shape longer. Use it to pull out paint that is settled towards the base of the bristles, close to the ferrule. Careful though, the tines can be sharp. Of course, we can't forget about paint rollers. We've got the roller cage and the roller sleeves. As with almost all tools, a good quality roller cage is a must. Cheap cages are made with cheap plastic, and if you try to put it on the end of a pole, it will often crack and break, making it not only hard or impossible to use with a pole, but also potentially causing a mess. Wooden handles with a metal ring at the base are the best that I have used so far. Basically, you want to make sure that the base of the roller cage has some reinforcement. Using a roller with a pole is much easier on your wrist and arms, allowing you to do better quality work and more of it. As for the roller sleeves, there are many different types. A low pile roller like a 9mm is good for a flat wall with little texture. The low pile also means that it doesn't absorb a lot of paint. A high pile roller sleeve is good to use on a brick wall or cinder block walls, or in cases where there is a lot of texture like stucco. Then there's rags. Not exactly a tool per se, but important to include in the painting section. Installing and removing work from spaces almost always requires some cosmetic repair. Most galleries have drywall, so having a couple of drywall knives on hand is important. For the most part, if you are not repairing walls regularly, you could get away with using the plastic blades. You can buy these at most hardware stores and even dollar stores. However, these are really only single-use blades, and personally, I think that's wasteful. A good small putty knife and a 6-inch blade round out any toolbox. Better yet, these can be used for applying paint or even gesso if you get good with them. As a cardinal rule, they must be kept clean. Do not leave any drywall compound on the blade. It'll cause the blade to rust, and when it's time to drywall, your blade will leave rust marks and even gouges in the drywall compound you're trying to apply. If this does happen, break out some sandpaper and give them a sand until they're clean again. Personal protective equipment, or PPE for short, is an important part of an artist's or a maker's kit. Good eye protection that fits and is comfortable for those times when you may be exposed to flying particles, like wood chips while hammering or sparks when grinding metal, can be a life-changing decision. Accidents can happen, and being prepared could make a big difference. If you're working with rough wood or metal, work gloves can really save your hands from nicks, cuts, and splinters. If you're hammering a lot, shoveling, or carrying heavy things, work gloves can greatly reduce the impact and wear on your hands. In other words, we could say that work gloves are super handy. When your work or the environment you're in produces loud or shrill noises, a pair of ears, as they are affectionately known, or ear protectors, can save your hearing in the short and the long term. When working in a loud shop where sounds can reverberate, you may suffer hearing loss over time. I find that loud noises give me a headache over a short period of time, so I like to wear them to protect my ears and my head. They're even great if you're in a general area and just want to reduce distractions and focus on your work, like when your friends can't stop replaying the same meme and you really just need to study. Now, if you're in an area where there are toxic fumes in the air, you really need to wear a respirator. The one here is pictured without the cartridges attached. There are many different types of cartridges that you can use for many different applications. Choose the right one for the job and make sure the mask fits well around your face. For artists working with paint, spray paint, airbrushes, inks, or pigments, some sort of hand protection is important. These materials can be extremely messy and hard to clean off. In some cases, you may even be using solvents or other chemicals. These can be absorbed by your skin and are harmful to your body. Creating some sort of barrier to your skin is a part of protecting your health. Barrier cream will create a barrier between your skin and the environment. It lasts for a while and isn't as cumbersome as gloves can be. However, I tend to reach for nitrile gloves because they're easy to put on and take off without worrying about washing up. They both do the job. It's really up to you to decide which is best. I would suggest, though, that even if you prefer barrier cream, it's not a bad idea to have some gloves for backup just in case. I've saved the best for last. This tool is my favorite. Commonly referred to as a 5-in-1, this multi-tool has a broad range of uses. Each different part of it has an application. It's great for pulling nails or staples, scraping surfaces, picking at stuck bits, cleaning rollers, and whacking things. I always have one in my toolbox, no matter what the job. Not all of these tools are necessary for your life to be complete, but many of them will make for a happy and helpful toolbox that is ready for you when you need it. Thank you.